Good evening and welcome to the Life with Nate YouTube channel. My name is Nate and today we're going to be reviewing Richmond as a tourist destination if you ever want to go. And so you'll probably notice a couple of different things for the YouTube channel. Today I have actual decent lighting, which I finally ordered off of Amazon because my family told me that in these YouTube videos they can barely see me because this room is so dim during the day and also very dark at night. So I finally have adequate lighting, which means you can see me in my full glory. And then in terms of a whiteboard, I picked this up at a garage sale because it kind of got me thinking. I've seen other YouTube videos that do whiteboard comparison charts, and I was like, I want to try the same thing. So what better way to get started than by talking about Richmond, out of all things, and I'm still learning, so apologies if this is still rough, but we're going to do a pro and con chart, basically. So we'll talk 3 pros and 3 cons, which is like pretty cool. So, without further ado, and because I've also seen on the metrics that longer YouTube videos don't really do too well on here. So, first pro is history. And forgive me because I will write this at the same time. So, just indulge me. Alright, I have a sense of humor, okay? So, history is like the first pro. And yes, I don't want to see anything in the comment section about my handwriting being absolute, crud, because it is. So, in terms of history, if you are a real big Civil War fan, in terms of historical facts, and you just love learning about it, then you're in luck. Because Richmond used to be the Confederate capital of the South. And I'm still learning to call Virginia the South, even though to me the South means like Florida, Alabama, which is like deep South. But Virginia, I guess, is considered the South, according to one of the tour guides that I talked to. So, the thing that comes to mind with history is the Civil War Museum, because that's what I did over the weekend. And so the pros and cons chart is going to directly correlate to my personal experience and what I did. So I went to the Civil War Museum. It's really fun. There was also an incredible tour guide that gave us like a tour of the exterior building at the Civil War Museum. You've probably seen YouTube videos about it, and like also mine as well. It's a very like colonial style, brick style type buildings, and like there was also like a foundry where they made like actual cannons that were used in the Civil War. So if you're a big Civil War fan, you're in luck because there's the Museum of Civil War there. There's a lot of different cannons that are used as models like throughout the city. And one of the best parts about the Civil War Museum was the musket demonstration. And fun fact, for the Embassy Life in DC brand that I run, which is semi-involved with this YouTube channel, I posted a picture of the tour guide with the musket, and it got flagged on TikTok, so go figure. But if you're a history fan, Civil War Museum, highly recommend that. All right, number 2 is going to be art. So, like DC, Richmond has a very cool art scene. And so, in terms of an art scene, it's pretty cool because I visited the Museum of Fine Arts when I was there, and I was instantly reminded of the National Portrait Gallery here in DC, and then also a couple of other art museums that are also here. So I went to the National Museum of Fine Arts. I had to speed run it because they closed at 5, which of course a lot of the good museums do. And it was pretty cool because they had different floors with different eras. So you had the European Impressionist era, you had the Russian Bolshevik era, you had ancient Egypt on the 3rd floor. So there was a myriad of different arts and paintings that you could see. So, second pro of visiting Richmond is that it has a strong art scene, and then also has other independent art galleries that I saw on Eventbrite that I just couldn't go to because it was a weekend, so what do you expect? So the third pro of visiting Richmond would be the food scene, and maybe also the drink scene by extension. And so, I'm not a big foodie. A lot of my friends are, and I don't really approach food in the same fascination like they do. Like, they literally, a lot of the foodie influencers that I know here in DC, they are eating out constantly. They love going to restaurants. I mean, I appreciate good food, but not on the same level. It's like, I can appreciate good food and I will eat to survive, you know what I mean? But like, I can get by, like, for example, I'm filming this inside my apartment, so I've survived on a diet of oats and protein powder for literally a week. Yeah, as disgusting as that sounds, but whatever. So in terms of a third pro of visiting Richmond, I remember the food scene being really good. I went out almost every night that I was there, so both desserts and also regular meals. In terms of expenses, it is expensive, but I feel like in DC the food scene is also expensive as well. Like you go out, be prepared to if you want to have a good meal, you know what I mean? Like you're not skimping out on stuff, and if you're going on a trip and you can't afford and you can't afford to tip, most importantly as well, because the tipping culture here in the US is different from like overseas. Where are you going out to begin with? So be prepared to spend money, you know what I mean? Like when I went out, I think I spent like $25 on average, for lunch and maybe dinner. And so there was one restaurant in particular that I want to give a shout out to because it was really nice, and the staff there were super friendly to talk to a stranger that was literally doing solo travel. So it's called Oak and Apple Barbecue on East Main Street, and they had a really mean sandwich, which is really cool. And it was I forget what it was like specifically, but it was a really mean sandwich with roasted chicken, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, but it was really good. And they had a strong, I want to call it like an IPA type of thing that they had over there. It was 7%, and so by the time I got back to the hotel room, the room was swimming, you know what I mean? So those are the three main pros of visiting Richmond. So we have history, art, and a good food and drink scene if you want to be into that. So in terms of a con, so if you're driving, this is like pretty important because your number one enemy is going to be traffic. So first con is going to be traffic. Probably can't read that because of that light. That's something to learn right there. So yeah, first con is traffic. So with that entirely, so in terms of traffic, it's going to be a little bit difficult because, and also parking by extension. When I was going into the city, I took the Amtrak and I literally walked everywhere. So I literally just saw like the cars that were there, kind of seeing like what was going on. And then also at the same time, there was a lot of traffic going into Richmond and also leaving as well. So just be aware of that. Like a lot of the major cities on the East Coast like have traffic issues like everywhere. New York is probably the worst. DC is pretty up there too. And so with that said, if you're driving to Richmond and you want to park, then definitely just be aware of that. Parking was really tight. Like when I was kind of going through the city, I was like, there were some parking garages that I saw, but if you're trying to go to a museum, typically parking is like already taken up, and especially when you go near VCU, which is like the college, it's also the same thing. So traffic is number one. Number two is walkability. So I'm the type of guy that when I go to a city, I'm walking everywhere. Because the thing is that I like to get a feel of like the ambiance, and like I like to go on random side quests when I'm like exploring different towns. And so walkability was a thing that I noticed because, for example, when I went to the Museum of Science, which was like on the other side of town, it was an hour like walking, and I could have taken the bus, which was free, but I wanted to see like what the whole city was about, you know what I mean? So I saw like a bunch of different murals, and like I met a bunch of different people, which is pretty cool. And it took me an hour to, walk from one side of the town to the other, and then also an hour back. So day 2, I was doing that, you know what I mean? Or was that day 3? It depends on what you call it. But walkability is going to be something that you got to consider if you want to go from one side of the town to the other when you're planning what to see. And so the third con, I would say, is maybe the lack of public transportation. And hear me out on that one. So I know I just said that there was like a bus system and stuff like that, but when I was there, like DC, for example, is grand because we have a metro system, right? It doesn't run for 24 hours like New York does, but at the same time, we have a metro that runs until midnight. New York has their, famous 24-hour subway system, which a lot of shit happens there. But at the same time, for the third one, a lack of public transportation. And so there's no metro system in Richmond. It's too small of a city to be able to do that. And so there's, buses, obviously, that you can ride, but they come every like 10 minutes or so, just like the X2 does here in DC. So if you're in a hurry and, you want to see different sites, like at the same time, just factor that in, like when you're going from place to place. Like when I was doing my Richmond Exodius or whatever you want to call it, like I was specifically doing stuff in a certain area, like the Museum of Civil War Bell Island, they were all in like the same area because I could walk and I was like going from place to place. So if you're trying to get from like one end of town to the other, public transportation is a little bit challenging, but it still exists. Or you could just spend money and take an Uber. That's probably the smart thing to do in terms of maximizing time and money. But I don't know. At the same time, like I wanted to see the city, and I got a bunch of pictures of cool murals that were on walls. So I think that will be it for the pros and cons chart because it's already 10 minutes long. Let me know what you think about these different style, like type of YouTube videos that I'm doing. I want to use more of the whiteboard, to kind of like be more interactive with the videos. So 3 pros, again, just to summarize really quickly, for Richmond as a tourist destination: good history scene, good art scene, decent to good food and drink scene, but I'm not the world's biggest foodie. Cons: traffic could be an issue going in and out of Richmond if you're driving. Parking also can be a challenge, but I feel like any big city, small city, like has that. Walkability. So Richmond is a walkable city, but it does take a while to get from one end to the other if time is an issue. And then lack of public transportation, which is a little bit limited. So maybe not lack of, but limited public transportation. And so, like I said before, there is a bus system, but if you're used to a metro system like I am, then it's faster, you know what I mean? Or you just take an Uber and you don't be cheap. So, a lesson learned. So let me know if you like these different style type of YouTube videos. Looking forward to exploring more destinations in longer weekends, and I will see you later. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos. See you around.